if we used our faith to recognize the one that lives in us? What more could we see if we just used our faith to recognize the one that lives in us? So I've just been kind of experimenting and like just using my faith to recognize the one that lives in us to see what I can change around me, because when I recognize the one that lives in me, I actually can end up doing more unintentionally than what I intentionally set out to try and do. Like things just happen around you. It's like, whoops, you just got healed. Sorry about that. And there's a fascinating story in the book of Mark, chapter 5, verse 30, and it's one of my favorite stories in the Bible. I just love it for so many reasons. And but the end of the chapter there, it's the story of the woman with the issue of blood. And there's so many dimensions that I could preach on that. There's just so much about faith in there, of just childlikeness and what have you. But I just love this bit. Faith, heaven is attracted to faith. Heaven is attracted to faith. And it didn't seem to matter that woman was breaking Mosaic law. It didn't seem to matter to heaven. She broke the law and she still got healed. Just a thought. Anyways, but it says there in Mark 5:30, it says, at the very end there, it says, Jesus turns to the woman and he says, your faith has made you whole, go in peace. Your faith has made you whole, go in peace. And I studied that out, and I found that in Acts 16:36, where the keeper of the prison said to Paul, now therefore depart and go in peace, it literally means, in the prisoner's situation, go in peace. Go in peace, as you would say farewell to somebody as they leave. But when Jesus says to the woman with the issue of blood, go in peace, it's actually not really a great translation. In the original context, it actually means go into peace. Right? So one is go in peace and the other is go into peace, which showed that perhaps Jesus is actually releasing there a key to divine health, is that we walk in peace and we stay in that place of peace. And so it says, Jesus was saying, like, as you go into Shalom or step into the house of Shalom, not only would the woman receive healing, but because she was actually already healed. She was healed when she touched him, right? Not when Jesus said it at the end. She was healed when she touched him, because the blood flow immediately stopped. That not only did she receive healing, she received total and complete wholeness. And last October, I was sharing in the school AMT for first year on healing, and I was actually sharing, the whole lesson wasn't on this, it was just one piece where I touched on it, and I stood in front of a gentleman on the front row, and I said, and Jesus says to the woman with the issue of blood, your faith has made you whole, go into peace. And then I stopped and realized I was standing in front of a guy, and I said, well, I guess she wouldn't have that problem. And I moved along the road to the first lady, and I said, and Jesus says to the woman with the issue of blood, your faith has made you whole, go into peace. And I carried on. That was Tuesday. Friday, I'm leading Friday night service, and she comes up to me and she says, hey, do you remember me? And I didn't, and she reminded me who she was, and I said, she said, do you remember teaching about, in the AMT about going into peace? And I said, I remember that, And she said, well, I was the lady that you stood in front of and said, go into peace. Your faith has made you whole, go into peace. And I said, I remember that. And she said, well, I've you didn't know this, but I've got polycystic ovarian syndrome, and I was told that I can never have kids. And she said, as you stood in front of me, she said, I just knew that I'd been healed. Now, I'm all into, I believe, but sometimes it's like, I don't care what you believe or not, are you or not? So I said to this woman, being an ignorant male, I said, well, how do you know that you healed a polycystic ovarian syndrome? She goes, I got my period. And I'm like, yay for periods. I actually grabbed her hand and she had a ring on, and I'm like, go home and make some babies then. And she goes, this is a purity ring. I'm like, okay. Get married first and then go make some. A couple of weeks later, I was sharing at the Twinview campus on a Sunday night, and I was sharing some of the testimonies that are happening, and this young lady came up to me and she said, you shared it in the class, and she said, I didn't want to share this with you because it just felt a little awkward, about sharing about my period with you. And I'm like, It's not at all awkward for me. I've got a wife and 3 teenage daughters. So just fact of life in my house. And she said, I haven't had a period for 18 months. And she said, I too was in that class that day, and I was sitting next to the lady that you stood in front of. And she said, and as you stood there, my period instantly restarted. And she said, I ran out of the class. Do you not remember that? And I said, I do. I thought I'd upset you. And she said, I needed to take care of something. And I came back. So the testimonies have just kept on rolling in, just one after the other. I'm in San Diego. I got a message around this that I preached called Accidental Miracles. And I stood in front of a lady, and I did exactly the same thing, not knowing anything about her. She'd been bleeding for 30 days nonstop. And as I stood in front of her, it just dried up. And they keep on coming, and I'll share two of my favorite ones, and then we're gonna. I don't even need to pray because there's going to be people here that are going to be healed. Is that I was teaching at Leaders Advance last November across the room here, and a lady came in. She was on the second year team that I had helped to minister to the pastors, and she had a blood-filled polyp in her cervical area, and I didn't know about that. And she was pregnant. She goes to the doctor, and they said if we take it out, it's a high chance that we'll abort the baby. So we're going to leave it in there, but it is growing, and we're just going to watch it and observe and see how things go. She came into the class that day, me not knowing a thing, and I just shared those testimonies. She says to herself, I'm going to take that. That's for me. She goes home, walks into her house, sneezes, and blows it out. Not out her mouth. She goes back to the doctor, and she was totally whole. But this is one of my favorite ones. This happened in May. I was driving up the freeway, and my gas tank said 0 miles to empty. I needed to make an emergency fuel stop on the way to speaking at our pastor's healing school. I stopped at the gas station on Twinview there, and there's a lady opposite me pumping gas, and she's really pretty. And I looked at her, and I saw innocence and purity written above her head, and it kind of caught me, and I kind of looked, and I thought I better look away, because if she looks at me and I'm looking at her, she's going to think, incorrectly. I just saw purity and innocence, and I looked away, and I was doing the gas, and then next thing she taps me on the shoulder, and she goes, you probably don't know me, but I know you. She said, I'm a student, and I was in your class. And she said, let me just tell you about a little bit. She said, I've gone through 2 abortions. And she said, not only did I get totally healed, I've been totally healed of the remorse and the guilt of all of that, just totally healed. But she said something went wrong on their second abortion, where they told me I could never have kids again. And she said, I haven't had a period since 2011. And as I sat in your class that day, she said my period restarted. And I'm sorry it took so long to tell you. I think that's my favorite one. But it's not just for ladies. I had a man come, and he's been healed as well. He had severe rectal bleeding, and just as he heard the testimony, he was scheduled for surgery. That just dried up, and it's now as at this morning. I had the 53rd one this morning, 53rd testimony. Now they are first-hand testimonies. Anybody that comes and says my friend was healed, I haven't counted them, and I had so many of those. The first-hand account testimonies, and I just want to encourage you. Please, I want to know. I do not feel at all awkward about it. You can heal me and tell me all about your period story. I absolutely love reading them. I've learned so much about woman's anatomy. It's incredible. But the thing that's got me is that as far as I'm aware, I've only prayed for 3 or 4 of those women in total out of the whole lot. It's just been at the release of the testimony. And it's just kind of like it's just going viral, and it's been so fun. And I just want to encourage you with this, is that to step into peace, go into peace, like you'd go into the house of Shalom. And I don't even believe that it's not like something like, man, I'm just really believing God that there's going to be a breakthrough in this. I know that there's going to be a breakthrough in this. There's kind of difference. It's just like a knowing. I know that people here this morning are going to be healed. And I don't even need to pray as we just go into place, as we step into peace, and as the testimony goes forward, there's going to be a collision of heaven that you will be healed, whether it be polycystic ovarian syndrome, irregular periods, no periods, too many periods, whatever they are. It's like, I just feel like today is your day. Let's step into peace.